see what responses were those. Okay, so what basically happened? What are these physiological responses that will happen? So let the fastest question that we are going to look at is the situation where the temperature is actually low. So how does the body increase the temperature? Okay, so the first mechanism is by increasing the rate of metabolism. We already said that your body carries out what you call metabolic processes. These can be synthesis processes. These can be breakdown processes. But basically, all the reactions that are happening in your body, these are metabolic processes. So when we have our bodies increasing the rate of metabolism, it means that our bodies are going to generate more heat. Okay, so what happens is that when the temperatures are low, the body is going to metabolize more to generate more heat. Okay, so this faster metabolism can be stimulated by hormones from, for example, the adrenal glands, the thyroid, and the pituitary glands. So that is why you really need to eat more, because when the metabolism increases, this metabolism is about breaking down food substrates. So you need to eat more, especially when you eat cold elements. And then shivering, the muscles now here. The muscles, when muscles contract involuntarily, means this is one of the ways in which the body actually generates heat. Okay, and then we go to the fact that what happens if the body's temperature is actually very high. So what we need in this case is to bring the temperature. So the body starts to sweat. Okay, the body starts to sweat, and then the sweating results into evaporation of this sweat, and that evaporation is stay cooling. Okay, and then we can now talk about the hair in hairy organism. In this case, the hair now lies flat. Okay, the hair lies flat, and therefore when it lies flat, that's not called a layer or mold of air. That actually is actually trapped if this hair is actually standing or erect. Okay, so that means that that hair is actually an insulation. So the moment you have the hair lying flat, that means that insulation is not there, and the heat will be lost. That also therefore means also in the first case where we saw the different ways in which you want the organisms to conserve the heat. In that case, you will have the hair being raised. That's why you see that when it is cold, your hair on your skin will actually be erect. Okay, this is because a thin layer of air is actually trapped. That being trapped means that an insulation is actually created, and this minimizes heat loss. Okay, and then we also have issues to do with muscle constriction and rationalization. When you have the temperature being high, you want to lose more heat, right? So the blood vessels on the surface, close at the surface of the skin, or close at the skin, actually dilate. When they dilate, the heat is actually lost easily compared to if there is vasoconstriction. So when you want to conserve heat, then you have vasoconstriction. The blood vessels closer to the surface skin are actually constricted, and therefore less blood flows in them, and therefore no heat is lost. Not much heat is lost. Then, okay. And then the other thing is if the um, if the blood temperature is high, the body will not metabolize at a higher rate. Or if the body actually metabolizes at a higher rate, that means you're producing more heat. Therefore, you have the heat, the temperature. Okay, so we have explained this. Those are basically physiologic mechanisms. The ones in this file, in relation to metabolism, in relation to shivering, in relation to vasoconstriction, vasodilation. These are even sweating. These are processes that you have no control over. Okay, these are physiologic processes. Now, um, animals actually also have what you call behavioral mechanisms in order to their temperature and within the particular range. Okay, so let's look at that. The first one that we're looking at is the organism will actually look for shade or even look for water. Okay, water helps to cool them down, and also when they move to shade, it means that they are not gaining that heat directly from the sun through radiation. And then we have basking. With basking, this is to say that if the organism actually wants to gain heat, it just goes and basks in the sun. Okay, basking in the sun is one way to absorb the heat from the sun so that they actually get warm. And then we have leaking. In this, you have animals like the cat. The cat can actually leak its fur such that when evaporation happens, it results in cooling. So this is particularly very important for animals that have living sweat glands. Panting, like the dog actually pants, and that allows and evaporation and also rapidly lose that heat. And then cuddling, we have animals that move in groups, and this movement in groups enables them to lose a lot of heat. Okay, so let's look at those that we call the popular farms, or the ones that we call the eco farms. These ones we have noted that they cannot regulate their internal body temperature physiological mechanism, but they rely on behavior ways. Uh, okay, so the first way in which these organisms actually helping temperature control is by reducing the rate of metabolism. Remember, I earlier on said that some of these organisms are not actually very, very young because in certain, um, for example, in very cold environments, they become inactive because their rate of metabolism is actually very, very low. Okay, so when the rate of metabolism is low, it means that they don't have enough energy, a lot of energy to actually speed being very, very late. So what this therefore means is that when they are not highly metabolizing, they're just conserving that energy. Okay, during situations which are not favorable to them, or what we call in the harsh conditions. Okay, so this is what reduces their activity levels. Okay, so we move to another point is that they can still move to areas where there is shade. They can go to the sun basking. They also do just like what we explained. The penguins can do this action. Okay, when they basically they come together and move in groups and do the basically they basically exchange that heat within themselves. Okay, we share that heat and we can minimize the loss. And then burrowing, we have those that burrow underground when the expression with the chemicals and again. And then we have what we call activation, which is that reduced metabolic activity with very high temperature during the summer. That is what we call um, activation. Okay, so some organisms like the frogs can undergo chemical changes to enable them survive during the freezing temperatures. The process that we call uh, as cryoprotection. Cryoprotection here. Okay, this is when the species or the organisms actually undergo changes in their blood composition uh, in order to prevent freezing. The wound frogs actually excellent. Okay, moving to the shell, drinking water. Okay, activation. That marks the end of this presentation where we have looked at temperature regulation. Temperature regulation is quite very important for organisms because if the temperature is not regulated, then you have an issue to do with metabolic processes. So we have two categories of organisms. We have those that can actually maintain their internal body temperature stable, and then we have those that have their body temperature changing with that environment. Okay. We have looked at the different physiological mechanisms for temperature regulation, and for humans, for example, uh, for mammals and bats, we have what we call uh, thermoregulation mechanism that involves the brain and the sensory cells and also effectors. And we have seen how these different effectors are. Thank you.